So I'm happy to welcome you at the second International Conference of University of Narcos Transformational Business Law, Raising the Borders. Dinara Tanasheva. I'm a partner of Ernst and Young and legal services in Kazakhstan and Central Asia. I will moderate the tech flow session despite this is the last session. I hope you all had lunch, you drank some coffee, and you're ready to listen to the most interesting topic on tax law. And our agenda is the following. We have many speakers. First is Rustam Wahidov, managing partner at International Tax Associates, a partner crew expertise. He works in Russia and abroad. His topic beneficial ownership disasters and taxpayer success in the judgments of Russian and European countries. I think that it will be very interesting to listen to Rustam, especially the international tendencies, the judicial practice, what's happening in neighboring countries. It's clear that sometimes these tendencies are very for the good, but sometimes they are expressed in our country in Kazakhstan. That is why waiting for his presentation. Then Sabina Sarsianova, Operational Director, Cyber Solutions Kazakhstan. Sabina will speak about tax issues in the digital economy. And we have touched upon this topic, everything that is connected to electronic commerce last session. But I think that it will be interesting about the issues, tax issues in the digital economy that the business faces with. And Sabina will speak about it in details. And then to speakers from WC, Dana Tarkmutina, partner tax resolution regulator, Kazakhstan, and also Dinara Tanasheva, Kazakhstan and Central Asia tax, cameral control notifications for the pilot project. We will listen to judicial prejudicial systems regarding royalties and dividends, and Abdrim Zaid will be the last attorney at Law Tank Law Firm. He will speak about the cameral control notifications for the pilot project. I know that the tax committee of European business associations sends a letter to the government about this topic. We raise this topic at different offices together with National Chamber of Entrepreneurs of Tashkent. I think that this topic is quite important, and we will listen to this colleague. Unfortunately, despite the topic is very broad and important, we have only 15 minutes for every presentation. That is why, dear colleagues, please speak with details, but be in time. I will remind you 5 minutes before the end, and I will show you the signs. And there is a Q&A session in the end after all presentations. Please send all your questions to the chat, and we have enough time for answering these questions. So that is why don't be shy and ask your questions. And please indicate your name and surname and the company and who you address this question to. That's it. And I would like to give the floor to Rustam. Rustam, the floor is yours. And thank you very much for a very warm presentation. I'm very pleased to present at the. Thank you very much that you invite Nara. It was very interesting to meet at previous sessions and the discussions. I would like to speak about beneficial ownership in Russian Federation and European courts. It's a very urgent topic. Moreover, in Kazakhstan, such convention as MLI is put into force. It's quite important for us. So we will start with this global explanation of Federal Taxation Service of the Russian Federation, what kind of structures they suggest to consider be real and what are doubtful. We had a letter from the deputy head of the council and Daniil Yekurov, and he considers three situations. So the first is the linear structure, operational companies upholding beneficiary, and here to explain what this company does, despite decreasing the tax at the source in paying dividends in percentages from these operational companies is objectively very hard. Another structure when we have several assets that are owned by holding company, they are sold and bought, but at least we have the function of operating the assets. And think that it's clear situation with subholding or withholding company when we have several investors. They combine their assets for and invest into several assets. And here we can something to deal with the issues of um, agreement of interest of shareholders selling and buying assets. And I think this structure seems better. Doesn't mean that if you have the structure, you will not have any issues there. But from primary impression point of view, it's more clear what the company does. And here the situation is not so clear. And in the legislation, probably it's not reflected, but it's a triad. So who is a beneficiary ownership of the income? It's the company that should have specific functionality. For example, if we have two secretaries who are not aware about this business, the structure can be very beautiful, but the functionality will be zero. And there should be qualified employees. It's connected with a part of functionality. They must fulfill different functions of the group, and there should be a legal base. Some taxes should be paid. Probably it won't be observed all the time because in the holding, when some incomes are released from taxes, nevertheless, if we have an activity that generates an income where you pay taxes, it's a big advantage. And there should be a general value of the company and for the whole structure. You need to explain what are the responsibilities if you fulfill these requirements. At least Russian courts, you will have more chance to be stable at the courts. And if we go to the decisions of the Russian courts, let's take Moskommertsbank, probably Kazakhstani people are familiar with this bank because it used to have Kazkommertsbank, and this case is fresh, dated 2019, but the structure probably is old. Probably they raised these issues not for the benefit for payers from 2011, and it's hard to say how they preserve the structure of distribution of income in the bank, but the specific moment Russian tax bodies raised an issue regarding taxation of the income that were paid in these rates or percentages on the loans. And here you can see Austrian franc, and some flows went via Austria and other countries, in particular via Luxembourg. And if we take the situation between Russia and Luxembourg agreement, probably Kazakhstani listeners will be useful to take into consideration that the Russian taxation convention, in comparison with Kazakhstani one, they often suggest a zero state at the source of taxation. And in this case, the taxpayer, Moskommertsbank, used the zero rate, and the internal Russian rate was 20% if you pay to the foreign resident, and if there are not any special agreements between them, there is a 20%. But in Luxembourg and Russian agreement, it was equal to zero. But after that, this money was paid to Kazakhstan also. Kazkommertsbank. And distribution and attraction of financing, and what do tax specialists see in this situation, because they made the reconstruction and they asked the question, what would happen if, for example, this tax is paid directly to Kazakhstan And after that, they decided, so let's take, for example, 10% of rate. And tax bodies told, no, no, no. If, for example, you showed us the special certificates on the convention, probably wouldn't have any questions, 10% rate, it's closed. But because you didn't do that and because you didn't have any certificates on the residency, that is why accordingly you pay 20%. I think it's a very negative result for a taxpayer. And what are the reasons of this financing by a foreign company? It's very hard to say. But if the rates were paid directly, probably they would be equal to 10% at the level of Kazakhstani source of financing. But because of the taxation convention between Russia and Kazakhstan, these taxes that are paid are accounted. And if we take the Russian company that deducted 20%, probably the Kazakhstani bank can account this amount that is kept in Russia. And I would ask probably maximum what we can do, we can give you is 10%, and it's a huge reverence from our side because the payment from Russia was absent, and probably Kazakhstani tax uh, specialist, probably the first reaction would be quite negative. If, for example, here you pay 20% via Luxembourg, so where is Kazakhstan here? Probably we could recommend to make some conclusions based on this case. It's obvious that it was the opportunity to requalify the receivers of taxation in this way. And because there was a lack of specific arguments, because the beneficiaries are Luxembourg and Austrian company or a bank, in this case, it wouldn't make any sense to use this tax. It means that Kazkommertsbank, the internal tax specialist, and I'm sure that they are aware about the situation, and I think that there were some proposals, but what I've seen in the practice very often, decisions are taken by passing internal tax department. What kind of conclusions can we make based on this case? Not only guys look because we use the international conventions of police inside of the companies develop special procedures that without the agreement of the tax specialist, no agreement can be approved. And I'm sure that there could be some problems at the level of taking decisions of the procedures. 2019, it was a decision of the court, and probably they were discussing the periods of 2014, 2015, but in 2011, some negative solutions appeared on the situation, and probably we have to take into consideration them. And inside in Russia, there are many cases on beneficial ownership, and based on what the receiver is not the beneficial ownership. Very often, tax bodies they don't want to receive the preferences on international agreements. And it was in 2018, one of the cases, but it's very interesting because it was in Altai, it's not the Russian court, but ordinary state oblast court, very in details made this scheme. And on this slide, I just selected some. Rustam, I'm sorry, Dinara, you have only 5 minutes. Okay, I will be in time limit. So it describes in details based on what decisions those people who signed the agreement, they didn't understand, for example, what was the basis. And for example, Latvian accounts and transit character of operation. And the next is Danish case from European Union. In 2019, we consider several cases that are connected with the payment of dividends via Cyprus, Luxembourg, and Sweden. And it's very simplified, but actually it was described on 10 pages. And there are some basic principles how the European Court considers the issues of beneficial ownership. In particular, it says that the quantitative criteria are not the indicator. There can be 50 people, for example, but it doesn't mean that we identify this company as a beneficial ownership. And the legal body must not, for example, justify who is the beneficial ownership. It's a transit structure, it's enough. But if it's beneficial ownership, you need to consider it for itself. But you cannot apply the convention. And whether they were the legal liability or not, it wasn't interesting. But if what happens in real life, and if, for example, you received 100 and you directed 90, and is just transitioning of the burden on justification, any payments via one company recognized as not corresponding with the beneficial ownership. Italian court that probably is not so friendly to taxpayers, but it seems to me that the situation actually was to the benefit of taxpayer because they couldn't justify specific level of activity of this intermediary company. So it's not, the Armageddon of very complicated financial deals, but it's a ruling explanation that are used by the European courts. In Russia, we have some positive decisions.
Российские правила о том, что должна быть переквалификация, не применялись, потому что их применение в конкретной ситуации было абсурдным. То есть по российскому законодательству нужно было переквалифицировать.
Based on the Russian Federation, they needed to transition this dividends that are paid to Cyprus
because the conditions were not observed, and the taxpayer proved that the money went and the money, when they came back, the taxation was applied, and this logic then worked, even though it's kind of strange written in the tax legislation. And based on the common sense, it's difficult to break such rules. Nevertheless, there is a decision of the court where it says if there is no need to minimize the tax, there's no need to indicate it. So what can be recommended in such cases? Analyze the current situation, seek for help of consultants, because all of those cases somehow there were some other brands around it, whether the brands were asked or not, and whether this was taken into consideration or not, it's a different issue. But the fact that we did have such a consultant, it's not an indulgence, it's not a guarantee. If there is a tax benefit, it should be a very serious reasoning to justify this based on the business profit and based on the advantages, and if we can assume that this is a scheme, then that's going to be a serious problem if you're not going to have a document that's necessary for business. So how did it improve the business? Who prepared the decision? All of this should be documented in a so-called defense file, and if necessary, we can, again, based on our experience, we can help you with preparation of such documents. And of course, it should be done before the taxation inspection came to you and gathered the documents of 3 or 5 years old. It's kind of difficult. And again, if organizers would permit, I would like to announce the initiative that my colleagues and I did. It's Electorium on taxation, international taxation. The experts gathered, and we are ready to deliver such lectures for free. Yesterday we had a free lecture. Next lecture is scheduled on next Wednesday based on MLI topic. And if you are interested in registration, you will be sent this link. And I would like to answer your question. I hope I met the time deadlines. Dinar. Thank you, Rustam. It's very interesting. The questions will be in the end. I would like to give a word to Sabina Sarsenova. Sabina, please.
Так, добрый день.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, colleagues. I would like to greet all of the participants, conference participants, and would like to state the gratitude to the Lincoln Company and to the Narcos University for the invitation to participate in this conference. I've been participating since the morning. It's very interesting topics from various sides, both from taxations, from non-residents, from e-commerce.
Темы проблемного обложения цифровой.
I hope my screen is visible.
Как озвучила Динара, да, тема.
As Dinara stated, the topic of my presentation is the issues of the taxation of digital economy. But as part of this presentation, given the strict time, I give the overview not about taxation, but about
Да, начнем с определения, что такое цифровая экономика.
in the digital economy. This is the digital economy is an activity which relates with the different technologies related to e-commerce, e-business, and everything which became integral part of both business structures and consumers. You can see the pictures, a little statistics.
Они были представлены более.
These figures, they were presented in the first sections and more details on e-commerce. These figures reflect the general tendencies of the development of e-commerce, which we can observe. And as we know, the digital economy develops quite rapidly, which assumes the usage of new business model, innovations, various digital goods. And with that, the legislation acts that regulate this, including the taxation, they cannot speed up to the development of the economy. And based on that, the legislation of the countries is not really responsive to the development of the current business processes. And this lack is a major issue in the taxation of the digital economy. As a reason, the legislation of the country is not meeting the current requirements of the business processes, and the usage of the current norms in the current legislation acts to regulate the traditional forms to the new, for example, technologies which were not there before, such as blockchain, cryptocurrency, digital organization. So we can then have several problems, such as lack of the mechanisms, involvement of the foreign organization. For example, the taxation on Google, and in many post-CIS countries, in Belarus, how companies, non-residents, can register in case of the amendments to a certain country. Also, the lack of the reliable taxation technologies, it's difficult sometimes to track the fact of provision of services or delivery of digital good if the payment situation is more or less clear, because it goes through the payment card if it's not the non-currency payment system. And the tracking of the service itself on a certain platform is quite difficult from the control point of view in general in Kazakhstan and in the world. So the difficulties in identifying the legislation field in the right, especially as we're talking about cryptocurrency, and also another issue is a different legislation. If you talk about cryptocurrency in Australia, cryptocurrency is considered to be the property. In Germany, currency. In Israel, it's a good. Also, there is talking about technical difficulties on introducing new taxation. For example, when there is a digital tax in Russia or Belarus, there were some cases when you pay this tax because in different national legislations to payment orders, there are different requirements to pay banking details or by the taxation services. So those technical moments should also be thought well of before introducing. Also, there is a huge problem with the malusage of the gaps in legislation, which is creation of so-called hybrid schemes. Also, there is another problem, which is high sensitivity of buyers to change in taxation, because introduction of any new taxes, since they carry fiscal services, first of all, overwhelms the consumers. Therefore, these issues lead towards the redistribution of taxation stop working, and what we see in a general landscape, there is a certain scope of the taxation load between traditional business and digital business. It's understandable that traditional business has more expenses, more taxes. Nevertheless, between foreign distant sellers and local internet retailers, even for example, import of certain costs of 200 euros VAT is not applied, no fees is not applied. Nevertheless, if the buyer returns it, then you can still apply the VAT. And then there's a difference between the various national and transnational business structures, various schemas where the profits are being taken to the low taxation countries, and also between the countries which are members of the integrated communities. So we can talk about European Union's countries. For example, the VAT in Luxembourg is 15% and Hungary 27%. And with that, if you order a good to Luxembourg and there is a governmental shipment does not have a VAT, then in that case, you can actually save 10 to 12% of VAT. So there is a difference between the taxes. You can see the picture. Right now, more and more automated processes are being substitute the work of the humans, and therefore there is a difference between the labor and salary and the work of the robots. And also there is a difference between the countries with a different level of digitalization. We all know that big companies are registered in the USA. The internet came from there. First internet shop was registered in 1994. Amazon in the USA still is the largest internet company. So what has to be done to resolve this issue? Of course, there has to be a systematic approach. First of all, is advancement of digitalization of national system based on the local legislation and unification of international taxation legislation as part of the improving. Of course, we need to introduce the automated control system. It's electronic signature, GOV, various systems. So for the digital economy, digital money, you need to have a digital control, and also introduction of the local control taxation, which is so-called Google tax. As part of the international tax, it should be the activities as part of the trans-border economy and as the local. I will tell more detail. For example, as part of the digital tax, it's basically serves as an intermittent item between services not provided and the services which are provided until the complete BEPS plan has been implemented. So what is this tax is about? This tax is applicable to foreign companies which provide digital services. The limitation is up to 75 million euro in the profit. This is an average number based on the European Union. And this the provision of services to B2B and to B2C. As part of the services, there is a provision of the marketing space for internet portal, data transfer about local users, and provision of electronic platform. If you look at the map, you can see that in the entire world, in various states, there is a different status for introduction of such Of course, in Kazakhstan, for example, no more than 2 billion USD. Then in Europe, this is much more significant effect. That's why this tax has been introduced, and the first country in Europe was France, with 3%, which won in I think the tax amount from the Apple Corporation, which paid them. We also see that this rates in Turkey, which is 8 and 7% in Czech Republic. So now, regarding the status of the Kazakh taxation, its tax code is under review. It's planned to be introduced in 2022. So it's services and goods that are subject to B taxation, and the payers have to register, so-called the conditional register. So in the world of digital economy, an electronic document exchange for the registration, foreign companies should send the letter via post mail and via paperback version, and a foreign company which provides electronic services via internet platform, which does the electronic trade to physical entities, also pays this when they, if the place of residence, if the Republic of Kazakhstan is a bank location is in Kazakhstan. Here we can see regarding the international measures, I think everyone knows the abbreviation WEPS, and here, Sabina, you have 5 minutes, okay? The plan was started developed in 2013, as Rustam said, the convention of NOI. It's ratified and started in January 1st, 2021, it will come to forces. For us, we are more interested in consultative document, Pillar 1. This plan consists of 15 activities, but in terms of the taxation of the digital economy, there is a separate Pillar 1. So here we can see that the general item is the decision of the tax problem, specifically the taxation as part of the digital economy. So what is being provided as a pillar, what is being offered as a Pillar 1? It's a probably innovative approach, which is at this point of stages. Right now, the taxation from the profits are being paid at the place of their locations and to their residency. And this document, Pillar 1, it's provided that the taxes are being paid from the profits, not based on the physical presence, but based on the economical presence, significant economical presence. And there are 3 triggers. First of all, it's based on the number of income, based on the number of users, and based on the marketing or trademark. So any of the 3 conditions give the country of the consumer to receive the tax from the corporation which is represented in a certain market. So what business will be applicable to? First of all, it's a digital business, it's a search system, social networks, and business oriented towards consumers. In terms of the digital business, it will be exception that the professional services which are provided online and require significant human factors would be exempt, such as legal, accounting, consultation, engineering services. In a few more moments, first of all, the companies that will be taxed whose income is not less than 750 million euro. By the end of 2023, OECD plans to finish the introduction of this approach. Pillar 1 was published in September 2019, and most interesting is based on which formula the tax will be allocated. It's understandable that the main tax will be paid to the country of residence. There is a specific formula. It's also not approved at this stage, but there's certain values of certain values. It will be around 20%, which will be allocated based on the countries where there is significant economic presence of the company, depending on the profit, on number of users, and on presence of the trademark. Since all these documents are in process, I'm gonna skip those, and there is a lot of actually many questions that OECD faces specifically. The document is quite large on a global level, and this working programs are constantly loosened, and after the ratification of this documents, these problems which were stated before, they will be eliminated, and in general, transnational companies which are also in a digital business, which do electronic services, they will not be able to avoid taxation and use of short zones, and main function of the tax is to have an allocation, transparency, fairness, it will work. That's all. Thank you, Sabina. I would like to give to Dinar from PwC, and then thank you, Dinara.
Что темы как будто бы между собой очень
Yeah, I think that these topics are very similar. Today, with Shinar, we would like to speak about passive income and about the practice in the field of checkings and also court claims. What's difference in our Kazakhstani practice that our analysis in the final dividends and royalties receivers, but also about active activities, types and services. And if you worked with international conventions, you have to understand that the final receiver is traced in passive dividends. And the peculiarity of Kazakhstani practice that we also consider active income. Rustam has shown very good review on loans, and we should not will focus on other types of revenue. And when, for example, the passive income is looking for the final receiver, and when we consider the issues whether this income shall be attracted to permanent institutions in Kazakhstan. The next slide. So I do have the mess about this passive income. So the bigger issue is regarding suppliers. For example, the rates shall be 20% because the money goes to offshore, like Rustam have shown in his structures or schemes, or probably it should be 15% based on Kazakhstan legislation, or it can be reduced by 10 or 5% based on convention. The main issue where it will be derived and what's the rate. And the most interesting thing, if we speak about the Kazakhstani practice, we can generalize what was happening for the last 12 months. There are many applications of control, index control, when the state income committee asked the question, if we work with no residents and either permanent institutions in Kazakhstan, and many companies can, for example, consider such concepts like a sleeping institution. So in the field of tax, actually, it doesn't matter because we have a registration in the base of the tax committee, and doesn't matter whether the permanent institution sleeps or not, we have it. And there is a question when we pay the dividend, the percentage is abroad. So to what extent this income should be subject to taxation? And the question, if it's not in Kazakhstan, how to identify the final receiver? And indeed, this practice is active not only in Russia. Currently, like Dinara has noted, everything that's happening in the Far or Middle East is reflected in Kazakhstani practice. That is why the topic of final receiver in Kazakhstan is traced very clearly in the framework of index control, and it's considered not only at the level of passive but also active income. For example, transport and forwarding services. And the certificate of residency, I think it's a very active topic. The tax bodies approach to this certificate as a form of document in a timely manner, and the new tendency in the certificates that many tax bodies transition to electronic format for the residents, and that's why there's an issue. Let's take Singapore, for example. If we have the certificate of residency that is published on their website, but only the person who has the key to the tax cabinet have the access. Not all the counter agents and taxpayers can see the certificate. So that is why, as for the certificates in residency, we have new types of problems here. Next, we also Shinar. Next slide. we would like to discuss different activities this year. Shinar, I would like to give the floor to you. I want you to speak what happened in this case. What's our focus? Good afternoon, dear participants of the conference. Can you hear me? Yes, Shinar, we can hear you. Can you see me?
В общем, что хотелось бы
In
отметить.
general, what I would like to note, currently, like Anara has said, in the work of a pre-trial or a trial, disputes can be at different moments in the framework of taxation in the part of passive incomes. And the first case is a dispute that happens in the framework of results and the application of desk control. The taxpayer receives a notification where the corporate income tax was reduced, and the essence of the violation is that the company applied a decreased tax in paying dividends at the same time. Non-resident, regarding to which these payments were made, the Republic of Kazakhstan had an affiliate office. And having defended their own position, the taxpayer says that the income that is paid in the format of dividends doesn't refer to the affiliate office. It means that these dividends refer to non-resident, thus there are not any connections. And however, when we consider this dispute, the Committee of State Income supported the position of tax body that sent this notification, and the conclusions were the following.
Этот нерезидент действительно имел филиал на территории
Non-resident had an affiliate office on the territory of the Republic of Kazakhstan. Moreover, the head of this affiliate office and the head of Kazakhstani company was one neutral person, and taxation body considers the activity of this natural person as managerial or strategical functions of this body led to the situation where the taxpayer had an income and the tax body considered the income from the distribution of dividends to be the income of the permanent institution of non-resident. That is why the decision was to the benefit of the tax body. Shadar, thank you very much. I'm not sure whether you turned on your camera, but I would like to note and comment on this case. Tomorrow, if you face with such problems, what can we conclude? First of all, you shouldn't have both a legal party and affiliate office in Kazakhstan, because there will always be a wish to attract more to this affiliate office. If you have such a structure, probably there is a question: who should be ahead of these two divisions, and what kind of local functionality there should be? You need to look at the charter on the affiliates, registration data, and the business code, and whether they were implemented or not. Probably you had to look at them, but I think that the tax body approached them formally, and they looked at the documents as responsibilities, and that is why if there is a necessity to have both affiliate office and legal body, you need to be very careful, because you always need to attract this permanent body. It was the case on dividends, and probably is a new practice, because as usual, we haven't touched the dividends, but at the end of the year, many cases are connected with dividends. Shanar, what can you say? Just 5 minutes. Yes, thank you, Shanar. On royalty, just briefly, as for royalty, we also can note the judicial dispute on royalty. The decision was that a non-resident company is the final receiver of royalty, because it has the right to use the income independently and to use the income. It's the position of local of tax agent why they use the decreased rate. In this political dispute, unfortunately, the court supported the position of tax body because during documents analysis, it's found out that based on the license agreement, the final receiver and the owner of a royalty is another non-resident company. That is why the court thinks that Kazakhstani company didn't have any right to apply reduced rate. Taken into consideration that a non-resident company is not the final receiver of royalty, then non-resident cannot apply the rate on royalty that is envisaged by the convention. This is the position of a tax base, but the position of taxpayer was that it was a separate structure in Netherlands, and it had a copyright product, but because the structure was in order to use royalty in Kazakhstan, and this product will be used here. So the red line is a structuralization that is not applied by Kazakhstani tax bodies. Shinar, I would like to show other cases. Complex franchising license, very interesting issue, because today we dispute whether it will be a royalty or services. And as for loans, also benchmark is a question, because the royalty price was a market one before December 31. We provide local reports where we show all our expenditures on gross agreements that during the desk in control rate. And Shinar, probably from the positive things, so we can note the last keys, just 2 minutes. I understand that we have to finish. So the compensation of dispute on the lower rate, and here the taxpayer was supported by the court. Actually, the issue with the dividends amount to non-resident, and non-resident didn't have any house. Was taken these dividends to different company, group of company that was registered in other country. The rule of ownership and use of dividend company, this money was received. It was justified by the documents. These documents were submitted during a tax investigation and dispute processing, and the court considered these documents to be enough to prove the legitimacy of the position of taxpayer. Yes, we can resume. If you are going to make a creative structure that can be implemented 95%, that tax body will look at the essence, and even the legally everything is a case. They can be even the criminal liability. Sometimes we need to look at these issues thoroughly and with clear eye. The situation is that we do not have enough money in the budget. That is why we need to be very careful and to consider these aspects. Thank you very much for to the organizers to speak about these issues. Thank you very much. You are in time. Great. So now the last presentation for today. It's not the least. Andrei, the floor is yours. Hello, dear colleagues, dear participants of the conference. Indeed, the topic is very important, and we celebrated 1 year anniversary of the project that I want to speak about, the tax control in the format of in-tax control. This is our pain in the framework of this pilot project regarding cameral control towards business. Do you see the presentation? Excuse me. So my screen. So what I want to speak about, first of all, I would like to focus on the pilot project. My topic in comparison with other speakers is quite local, but nevertheless, in my point of view, it impacts on economic and investments climate of the country, as well as it shows the gaps of our tax bodies from administrating taxpayers' point of view. Before we go to our pilot project, so this is the topic I want to touch upon. First of all, I would like to show the participants the definition of in-house control. So in-house review or audit is a part of tax administration. It's control of state this is the state control over the activities of taxpayers, where the tax body analyzes the data of taxpayers outside and inside of sources, compares it, and looks for different violations of tax legislation. So the objectives of in-house audit is to give the taxpayer a chance or the right to independently eliminate different violations. And how can we form an in-house audit? What are the results and how can we show it to taxpayers? Very often, the in-house audit is made in the form of notifications on elimination of violations based on the results of in-house audit. And notification is a message of tax body on the obligation of tax obligation by taxpayer in the part of notification. Notification of in-house control is subject to 30 working days for implementation. After the day when it was received, when it's received, it means that you have 30 days in order to implement it. But how it can be implemented? How Article 96 suggests of the code, there is a way that is comfortable for tax bodies when the taxpayer presents tax reporting for a period that refers to this violation. Or I will touch upon such moments like, for example, the registration of accounting and payment of VAT. And more relevant moment, I would like to focus our attention on it. Some cases when taxpayers represent the tax reporting for a period with violations. And the second way how to fulfill the notification covers those cases when a taxpayer disagrees with violations. In this case, he can submit to the tax body explanation. Also, it can show an approval document. And thus, it proves to the tax body that no violations indeed happened. What does a tax body conduct? First of all, it checks the explanation of taxpayer, the documents that prove the absence of tax violation, and implements specific decisions, own decisions, and it takes the position of taxpayer or objects it. And in case if a tax body considers that the taxpayer didn't fulfill or not correctly fulfill the notification, the tax body can stop the cash operations of a taxpayer, and he can assign and conduct, well, it means let's go from a general representation of in-house audit to our pilot project. In April 2019, 68 article of a tax code had such a norm, sub article 1, note 1, where the tax code introduced very interesting corrections in this norm. There was a suggestion that for the purpose of modernization of tax administration, the tax body can observe the implementation of pilot projects in the part of administration and fulfillment of tax liabilities of tax payers.
Later, this was in October, somewhere in the mid-October of 2019, there is this pilot project. Pilot project is nothing but an order of the first deputy of the prime minister. He is also a minister of finance, dated October 3rd, 2019, about approving the policy on advancing the VAT based on the electronic digital system. As we know, starting 2018, with an introduction of new tax code, the technology is being applied to certain segments. From my side, I would also say that this is a certain trust segment by the taxation bodies to taxation payments. And there are certain risks degrees, low level, as we say in school. We will call them the A students. Then there is a risk degree as an average, and then there is a risk degree as a segment high risk to certain being assigned to certain taxpayers. It's the so-called C students, those that systematically violate the taxation legislation. Then also the criteria were introduced on how to assess the taxpayers to a certain risks degree, but those policies is under the internal usage. They are not applicable to the third parties. Therefore, the taxation body, based on their own review, assess a certain taxpayer and assigns them the risk degree. But how the taxpayer does not know. So what does this pilot project gave us? So what does pilot project did to us? So if we will compare it to a regular in-house audit, as per the taxation audit, this pilot project, instead of 30 days, has now 5 working days. It's horrible. If before the accountant and the company, it was difficult for them to prepare a big number of documents in 30 days, and now they need to, explain the lack of taxation violation. Then for now, it's only a few days. And with that, it's also the notification method was changed. If before taxation body would accept certain violations, and again, right now it requires all the invoices and the tax. If before the taxpayer could go to the tax body and just attach all of the verification document that says Article 96 of the tax code, the taxpayer has to attach the number of documents in which he explains in his explanation. In a pilot project, taxpayer should provide all of the payment documents which talks about his payment procedures. And again, it's a very abstract understanding and a very vast understanding for the taxpayer not to understand, not to receive it from a taxpayer. So what is the difference of the consequences of not executing this? If it's just a stoppage of the expensive operation, it's an arrest of the banking account then, and the law for that, a part of this too, the tax body can limit the taxpayer the access to the information system of electronic accounts. In other words, to block the electronic invoice production, which means that I am, as a taxpayer, while not having a chance to issue electronic invoices, I will not be able to download. That means I cannot actually do the business. So all of this moment really affect the taxpayers, and that's why it was created a huge resonance. From my personal opinion, and not just mine, but also the opinion of the community of lawyers, the position of the pilot project contradicts the current legislation. If sometime in the tax code, in entrepreneurial tax code, there is a voluntarily or the presumptions then right now, this pilot project, these principles are being completely violated. A part of that, this consequence when the tax body blocks the access to the issuance of the invoices, and we know that right now majority of the taxpayers are obliged to issue electronic invoices, then regarding that, there is a relation to a constitution, because as we know, the payment of the taxes is an obligation of each and everyone. But how am I, while I'm limited in the issuance of invoices, how can I legally pay the taxes if the tax body blocked my issuance of electronic invoices? Therefore, I cannot do the shipment of the goods. That means I violate which means my constitutional rights. As of today, I see that from the taxation body, there is a lot of disadvantages in usage of the taxation legislation. Also, it's not unclear about how to use it in practice, and also there is a divergence of opinion on how the authorized body, which is the state profits committee, and also there is no understanding between its own structural divisions. So all of these activities which are being applied as part of the pilot project, in my understanding, it's an ability of the taxation to construct the active mechanisms with these taxpayers, and therefore the ecological subjects of the businesses suffer. From my point of view, I would recommend to business and to taxpayers to continue to defend their own rights and their own interests, since there is a positive court practice which on the issues which we discussed today. And of course, we cannot not insist on the fact that the taxation bodies would do a constructive dialogue with business. Last week, I had an inside information. There was a data that taxation bodies in this pilot project plans to change the approaches, plans to change the approaches to the consequences which were used by those that did not execute the requirements of the in-house audit. So I think a tax body heard the business, and in this part there will be certain progress. That's all. Thank you, Abdem. Thank you, colleagues. I think there are many changes, and like IKI, article number 66, local reports on the transfer. So there are many questions. Thank you, colleagues.
Понятное дело, что это вот как бы
And it's understood that, and thank you, colleagues, for sharing the information on what is happening now, both in Russia, both in abroad in Kazakhstan. But I just looked the Q&A, did not see any questions. Maybe I think because it's very interesting, actually, and it's not clear how it will be developed. So if possible, I would like to ask one question to all speakers, since we are all in anticipation of the new year. Maybe we can all be some fortune tellers. If you could, in a couple of phrases, how do you see the development of the tax practice in Kazakhstan in the next 6 months or in next 12 months? I would be interested to hear you. You can speak in whatever queue you want. We can start with you, Rustam, if you want. So please, thank you, colleagues. I'm opening my magic ball, and I'm going to tell you what is happening in Kazakhstan. Everything is going to be okay. I'm confident that everything is going to be well, but there will be no surprise. The tax body will have more good instrument on how to control and dispute any payment with the usage of the international taxation policy. Kazakhstan also adopted the limitational benefits. It's more strict. It's the most strict in a way. So we will look at the countries that they will work with. It's Russia. Russia had also adopted the limitation of benefits. It's India. In others, it will be the principle. We can look at the transactions, and again, you need to look at the resources of the tax code, but the tools, it's just like Rambo. It's Rambo maybe is not the exactly well-known persona to all, but people my age might remember. but it's a very, very powerful weapon. So be prepared that your deals will also be tested. Do not make the mistakes that we've spoken about, that I mentioned, which the groups that did not evaluate their risks. And from the point of view of what is happening in the budget field, everyone is lacking money because pandemic had really hit hard the government, the people, and government needs to take this money from somewhere. So do not wait for the kind-heartedness. Be prepared that this will be a very strict conversation, very strict negotiations, strict discussions. And however, if you prepare to all of this in advance, there's many examples, especially from the Russian practice where it was all clear and good. You had you did it very well. I would like to add a little on MI, specifically on the rules of the main objective. It would be good if tax inspectors could be fair and transparent in their understanding, because they recommend even now to have a defense case with all of the documents, with all of the charter, and also to have this, because we understand that for the usage and for the defense, we need to have the entire package of the documents. And this is an additional responsibility. So we would like in place to have the tax inspectors to have the vision that in order not to complicate this procedure, this administrative procedure for the taxpayers, it's just a wish. It's not the vision, it's just a wish. Hopefully something will happen. I would like to join in a recent time, and probably it still will be not enough money coming to budget. There will be bankruptcies of SMEs, will be the in-house audit, and the questions on the intergroup expenses transferred. The question on the salaries in the regions is very low, 40 to 130,000 of tenge. So do not wait for the understanding. All of the questions will be taken to the state revenues committees. Those that will strong, they will take it to the political levels, and foreign investors council. So again, I think that the end of this year, next 6 months will be very active. Thank you, Dana. Darren, what would you like to say? I will say that every time I talk about some moratorium or about weakenings from the state bodies to business, it's something is wrong there. And you know that in this specific period, business will become worse. It's as demonstrated by the pilot project. It's demonstrated by other measures of the tax people, the taxation servants in the relations to the citizens. But from my own side, I think that I would like to say that to those that do not trust to tax, you need to trust the taxpayer, and then the taxpayer will bring money to you, rather than will hide them and wait some punishment from the taxation services. So I think trust is what's most important. Thank you. Okay, colleagues, I think it was interesting discussion. Of course, not as many questions as we would like to have, but I think in the end, when you go to networking, you can have more questions there. So I would like to wish everyone good health, especially right now in this period of time. So for everyone to have things been good, stay warm, because it's cold nowadays. I don't know how it is. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, what a pity that I'm not in a wonderful Kazakhstan where it's thank you all, goodbye. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Please allow me again. It was very interesting to participate in this very interesting discussions. Again, I saw feedback from our colleagues, and I see that the conference, they like the conference. What I would like, of course, the online cannot be compared to the offline, but nevertheless we have what we have. Given the situation, I think next year we will have a chance to have it offline, to visit our beautiful city, beautiful nature, and speak in person and develop solutions, because online is a good thing. It actually helps a lot, but it cannot be compared to the wonderful communication with each and every one, with each and every one participant. In the end of the conference, I would like to share the plans, just for you to know that I will tell you briefly. Our School of Law and Public Policy plans to create the educational center on increasing the qualification, like a training center, and based on university. It was never before. We will introduce our speakers and the foreign speakers, which could lead, which could share their knowledge and in the field of legal. And I think it would be interesting for everyone, and it will be all for free and allow you to combine the training and the work process. Also, I would like to share that our school plans to initiate the development of the code of electronic trade, because everyone understands that it's our current legislation needs certain twists given the digitalization, and this is the time when we need to regulate certain issues which arise during electronic trade, electronic deals, digital documents, digital signatures, and even digital currency. It's a reality, and we cannot hide our head further. It's impossible. So it's a requirement of an economy. So again, many business subjects is now, it's not the end of economy, it's a restructuring. So those sectors which do not understand or are not moving with in the same time, space, they don't understand that there is a new era. If you will not consider this, then this business will die, and then the legislation base will not be able to make it. So for Kazakhstan, I think it's a stable country in the Central Asian region, which in the same time we have a big potential, legal, economic, and we need to restructure it given the new trends in the world. So we initiated this process, and I would like to again invite everyone of participants of all today's meeting, and we needed, it's not needed for you or for me, it's it for economic, for business development, and for entire development. So it's it's a process which is needed. Pandemics is a problem, temporary problem, but again, it has a big landscape for the international economy. And I hope that we will bypass this in a different way. And I think by next year, when we will do this conference, I hope that it will go online and maybe offline in a combined way, and it will be in the different conditions, given the changes both in policy, in systems, and in general in the public relations. So we are living in a very interesting time. The time is very interesting, unusual, and we need to consider it and use it, maximum our knowledge, our possibilities, our capacities to transform ourselves in new positions and reach new horizons in a different reality. So our conference today and conference in the future is an attempt, I think it's a successful attempt to adapt to the changes in the changing world. I think that we are making small steps, but we are really going to a big truth that everything is changing quickly and everything is being done differently. Therefore, I would like again to thank everyone for participation in this conference. It's a good platform that it's a new food for thought. We are all in our working processes, but sometimes we need to reload our thought, and when we talk to each other, this reload happens. So I would like to wish everyone success. I would like to wish everyone achievements of good results. And of course, I would like in the end to thank our partners, which is LinkedIn Conferences and EY. Those our main partners which helped us in this conference. I would like to thank our information partners, which is Gazbar, Paragraph, and Zakon, and our other partners which provided help in the provision of these conferences. Again, thank you for your active participation. I hope we will meet again in our favorite city of Almaty. And even though we were talking about the weather in Almaty, the weather became maybe somewhere as to similar to Western Siberia, but nevertheless, the advantage of this weather is that it's more attractive and everything looks more wonderful because it's such a beautiful background, such a beautiful weather. I think for our south regions, it's very interesting and very tempting, I would even say, because we see the life in the different views and we get used to various challenges, including the weather challenges. So with that, I thank you. I would like to see you next year. I wish everyone good luck. Hopefully we will meet well in next year. Thank you.